maker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Overturned truck, freeway construction, rubberneckers slowing everything down. I travel for work. News like that used to ruin my whole day until I discovered Citrix GoToMeeting. With GoToMeeting, you can meet from anywhere using your computer, tablet, or smartphone. No expensive travel required. And with HD video, simply turn on your webcam and it's like being in the same room, which means you can stay productive no matter how bad the traffic gets.
Visit GoToMeeting.com and start our free 30-day trial.
It's a couple minutes after the hour. I'm Di Rice with the latest in local news on Kcaa 1050. A jury convicted a Corona man of second-degree murder in the death of a Corona woman who was caught in an exchange of gunfire between her boyfriend and the defendant in 2013. 22-year-old Ruben Banuelos was outside Roberto Ramirez's home when Ramirez saw Banuelos and another man stop in the middle of the road looking at the cars of Ramirez and his girlfriend, Nanette Priscilla Serrano. Ramirez told the two men to leave. While the men complied, Banuelos came back with a gun. Both Ramirez and Banuelos fired shots at one another, with one of the bullets hitting 21-year-old Serrano, who died later at a hospital. Banuelos could receive 40 years to life in prison. He will be sentenced May 11th. And the mother of the 15-year-old male who shot a Victorville girl contends the shooting death of 16-year-old Dakota Washington was an accident. However, it has been discovered that the suspect was on juvenile probation and he fled from the scene Sunday night. The two teens were reportedly playing with BB guns, but instead of picking up a BB gun, the suspect picked up another loaded gun. Washington was shot in the chest, and the suspect was arrested on involuntary manslaughter. There are no further details regarding the incident at this time. Inland Empire weather. We are cloudy with a chance of rain through Thursday. Highs expected to reach 69 tomorrow, 55 overnight. Right now, it's about 57 outside the studios here of KCAA.
This traffic and weather report is brought to you by Unbound. Do something meaningful today. Change the life of a child living in poverty. Learn more at unbound.org.
CNBC Headline News is brought to you exclusively by West Coast Auto, located at 5180 Holt Boulevard in Montclair, where you'll find the widest selection of the most pristine used automobiles in Southern California.
There are 3 reasons why West Coast Auto of Montclair has been consistently named top-rated pre-owned dealer in California. Quality, trust, savings. Every vehicle is hand-selected, extensively serviced, and reconditioned by our certified technicians, so you can feel certain you're getting the best in-class vehicles with financing options that work for you. Like 0% down and no payments for 90 days.
Experience the best for yourself with West Coast Auto of Montclair. Online at westcoastauto.com or by calling 909-9000.
This is KCAA.
It's time for the Al Palazzo Show, a show about San Bernardino.
I'm Al Palazzo, and I have an A1 plan for San Bernardino.
Al Palazzo has given guided tours of his plan, an A1 plan, and a great vision to make San Bernardino a great place to live, work, shop, with entertainment, and to raise a family in a safe environment for the next 100 years. So let's spend the next hour with Al and hear his plans. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Al Palazzo.
This show will cover a vision for San Bernardino for the next 100 years. The themes today are a river walk and the National Orange Show. I first will talk about a river walk. Many years ago, over 20 years ago, the Disney Corporation was thinking of expanding its theme park at Disneyland. The Disney Corporation shared artist sketches with the LA Times newspaper of a second theme park planned in Anaheim next to Disneyland. It was going to be similar to Epcot in Florida, in Orlando. But here in Southern California, it was going to be called Westcott, with its theme of international villages. What does this have to do with San Bernardino? Bear with me. I will get there. I knew the Disney Corporation would have trouble following through with this theme because they needed a lot of land to build this park, and the land in Anaheim is very expensive, and I knew it would be too expensive. I met with the leaders in Ontario and told them that the vacant parcel north of the 10 freeway between Vineyard and 4th Street and Inland Empire Boulevard, approximately 200 acres, it still is vacant, could accommodate this project. I even extolled the virtues of the surrounding area. There is an airport already in Ontario, close by. There were and are today hotels, a convention center, and freeways, the 10 freeway, the 60, and the 15, and the future 210, all close by. Also, there were the Metrolinx San Bernardino and Riverside lines. People could be brought in by the train loads from Union Station in Los Angeles to this theme park. At the same time, San Bernardino was considering the Lakes and Stream project that never materialized because it became, in my opinion, too grandiose. Maybe if they, the city, would have kept it simple and listened to me, we would have a Riverwalk today that was inspired by the Disney International Villages Westcott theme park that was eventually replaced by the California theme park that the Disney Corporation built instead in its place. I still believe the Westcott could be built in Ontario. Think of the jobs for our young people. And I still believe we could build a Riverwalk in San Bernardino, even though the Lakes and Stream project is no longer being supported. We were told that the Lakes and Streams was necessary to alleviate liquefaction in the case of a major earthquake. The water underground San Bernardino was contaminated because contractor during the war years dumped things onto the ground that seeped into the water table. And the only way to clean up this contamination would be to bring it to the surface in a reservoir and I guess throw the water up in the air and the aeration and have the water molecule bounce on hard surfaces and cascading like a stream does. The impurities would bounce off and the water molecules would stay together. And finally, there was more than enough water, the equivalent of Lake Shasta, to meet our needs in San Bernardino Valley. And the excess water could be sold to Orange County, and this would be the goose that laid the golden egg, or the ever-ready bunny that just keeps giving and giving. The Riverwalk that I am going to describe does not require the Lakes and Stream project. Originally, it would have been tied to the Lakes and Stream in a superficial way, but the Riverwalk that I am going to explain can stand on its own. First of all, This was what I call the icing or frosting on the cake. I never refer to the Riverwalk in detail on the tour that I give, that has 12 categories, and one is the Riverwalk, because there is so much more important work that we in the city of San Bernardino need to do first. But had we started doing 30 years ago the areas that I talk about on the tour vision of San Bernardino for the next 100 years, we would be ready for the Riverwalk today. Anyway, let's hope that someday we will be ready for it. And let's continue. Every city needs many reasons to come to a city and enjoy that city and participate in events that occur in that city. This weekend, I enjoyed the Ollie McDonald show at the Sturgis Theater. It was fantastic and occurs every year. Later this week, or later in the show and later this week, we will talk about the Orange Show. The Orange Show starts in a couple of days, I believe. But back to the Riverwalk. Warm Springs comes out of the Meadowbrook Park and crosses Arrowhead Avenue south of the new courthouse. It then turns left and heads south to the Orange Show, parallel to Arrowhead and D Street. You used to be able to see it at the Orange Show between the parking lots and the fairgrounds. Now it is covered over with pavement. But the portion between Mill Street and Rialto is still open. This is the area that I will explain a Riverwalk. On the east side of the creek could be a bike path connecting the Orange Show, then going north to Rialto Avenue, surrounded by green trees, then going through Meadowbrook Park behind the new courthouse and crossing 3rd Street behind the old courthouse and the county government center, up Mount View, all the way to Highland Avenue, into that green median from Highland Avenue to 40th Street, then crossing 40th Street into that dirt area along Electric, over to North Park Boulevard, and then to California State University, San Bernardino. This was the bike path to the Riverwalk, or next to the Riverwalk. The portion of the Warm Creek between Rialto Avenue and Mill Street could have a big pipe laid into the creek to not obstruct flood control. Above the submerged pipe could be approximately 3 feet of water with little boats or rafts going from the Orange Show, Mill Street, to downtown Rialto Avenue, like the Riverwalk in San Antonio or the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. The area west of the creek would be a pedestrian stroll through trees parallel to the small stream with the small boat rides. Little lights that twinkle, there's the Disneyland connection, will be in these trees. This walkway or paseo will go through the area like the bike path I just described, from Mill Street to Rialto Avenue, from Arrowhead to E Street, and would be a mini theme park. But what kind of theme park am I talking about? It would be a theme park that would bridge the Orange Show grounds with the downtown. It would have 25 cafes of foods and cultures from all over the world. I don't have the time to list all those cultures today, but I actually came up with 25 just going across the continents on the globe and thinking of the different nations and the different cultures. And I came up with 25 different cuisines. Remember, the Disneyland original plan for Anaheim was international villages? That's the connection with these international variety of many different cuisines. This is a miniature of the international villages that the Disney Corporation originally wanted in Anaheim, and inspired me to look at our resources and geography that we have in San Bernardino to fill the gap between the Orange Show and the downtown. San Bernardino, with a mini theme park of foreign cuisines and a destination to bring people who will want to visit San Bernardino and be in San Bernardino experiencing these different foods from all over the world. Oh, by the way, all the little cafes and restaurants will have the architecture to reflect something about the history and the architecture of that culture that these different cuisines represent. There's the association with Disneyland. Isn't that what happens when we go to Disneyland? We see these cute little buildings that have architecture that takes us into a kind of atmosphere, environment, and that's what this little theme park that would just basically be small cafes with outdoor dining, of course, looking at the people who are strolling through the trees along the creek that has little boats or rafts that people are just enjoying going up and down from Rialto Avenue to Mill Street. And on the other side would be more rustic with the people who are riding their bikes through the city, all the way from the Orange Show, all the way to Cal State. Okay. I think we will continue. And this leads us into the history of the Orange Show and to San Bernardino and its future. By the way, the Orange Show starts soon. I already mentioned that, and I will be going because it was one of my favorite places as a kid, and I'm still a big kid. I don't care how old I am. I'm 66 years old. I still look forward to all the foods at the fair. A candy apple, hot dog on a stick, popcorn, snow cones. I try everything, but I don't get on the rides anymore. Well, we should celebrate our history, and the Orange Show was and can still be a big part of our future. I see someday an arena like the Citizens Bank in Ontario, replacing the old Swing Auditorium with indoor concerts. Do you know that many, many years ago, great people, celebrities, performed there? Does the name Elvis Presley sound familiar? He performed at the Orange Show. The Rolling Stones' first concert in the United States was at the Orange Show at the Swing Auditorium. As a kid, when I would go to the Orange Show, there were movie stars and comedians from Hollywood. Always Bob Hope came. There were even great singers like Sammy Davis Jr. I remember my brother coming home in the early 50s and he said, I'm going to go back and see this kid at the Orange Show. He can do everything. He can sing, dance, And that was Sammy Davis Jr., who later had an unfortunate accident in Devore and helped with his friends, the Rat Pack, to build the community hospital that now exists in San Bernardino because he lost an eye. And that's where they treated him, at the old hospital next to where the government center is now on 4th and Arrowhead. Anyway, I see a hotel at the corner of E and Mill Street serving events at the fairgrounds and being close to downtown San Bernardino. Maybe an Embassy Suites. Also, if the Renaissance Fair were to ever leave LA County again, I wish it would come back to our area at the Orange Show. The Orange Show has the grounds to support such a fair. I like the orange trees along Arrowhead Avenue. I wish our building code would require small miniature citrus trees as part of meeting the landscaping requirement for every and all different types of development. Rancho Cucamonga everywhere has small vineyards that landscape different businesses because that's the history of Rancho Cucamonga. We need to embrace our history in San Bernardino and celebrate it everywhere. And the orange tree or miniature orange tree is such a beautiful thing that could be in small little squares and everywhere in our city. We could bring back the grounds of the Orange Show with so many more events occurring throughout the year. I think this is a good time to go to a break, and when we come back, we will continue with the Orange Show and some of my memories that I hope can come back.
You've been listening to the Al Palazzo Show. Al will be right back with more of his A1 plan for San Bernardino.
A longtime Washington PR flack for tobacco giants, labor exploiters, frackers, and other corporate profiteers celebrates himself as Dr. Evil, the scourge of all progressive groups. But Rick Berman is not a doctor, not evil, and not a scourge. While he is a wholly unprincipled little man, he's just a self-serving huckster who grubs for corporate dollars by offering to do their dirty PR work. Berman's modus operandi is not exactly sophisticated. Taking money from the likes of Philip Morris, Monsanto, and Tyson Foods, he sets up tax-exempt front groups with nondescript names like Center for Consumer Freedom, Employment Policies Institute, and Environmental Policy Alliance, posing them as independent research outfits. Each one is an empty shell, run by his small staff out of his Washington, D.C. office. Using the names of the front groups, Berman and Company buy full-page newspaper ads and write opinion pieces that amount to raw hatchet attacks on whatever progressive groups or public policies the corporate funders want to kill. His mad dog style is hardly worrisome to those targeted, for rather than drawing converts to the corporate funders' cause, it merely rallies the usual anti-labor, anti-enviro, anti-fill-in-the-blank crowd. But it still appeals to brand-name corporate clients, for Berman promises to spew their message into the media without having any of the nastiness stick to them. We run all this stuff through nonprofit organizations that are insulated from having to disclose donors, he assured energy executives last year. There is total anonymity, he bragged. People don't know who supports us. This is Jim Hightower saying, but big holes in his curtain of anonymity are now revealing some of the corporations hiding behind it. To take a peek, go to www.bermanexposed.org.
1050 AM. Don't forget that number. And for you young people who got here by accidentally fat-fingering your FM band selector, we're an AM radio station. And AM refers to more than just the time of day.
What have I learned so far? I've learned that there is no one path right for everyone. I've learned that without my high school diploma, I can only do so much. My options were limited. I found a free personalized learning program with Learn for Life that has a flexible schedule so I could keep my job while earning my high school diploma. I found new career training opportunities that would jumpstart my future. What have I learned so far? I've learned that I can change my life.
Are you 14 to 19 years old and looking for a free high school diploma program with flexible meeting times? This program allows you to keep your job or important family responsibilities while earning your high school diploma. If you've fallen behind on credits or dropped out of school completely, get back on track with free tutoring, a caring faculty, and one-on-one attention. For more information on how to reach your graduation goal, visit learnforlife.org. That's LEARN4LIFE.org. Or enroll today by calling 877-360-LEARN. That's 877-360-LEARN.
Here's a look at the community calendar. I'm Carlos Gonzalez. The city of San Bernardino invites you to take advantage of Free Dump Day. If you haven't wanted mattresses, appliances, tires, electronics, or shrubs to get rid of, mark the last Saturday of each month on your calendar. You must provide proof of residency with your driver's license or utility bill. No hazardous or construction materials will be accepted. To find out the times and places for Free Dump Day, Google City of San Bernardino calendar. If you're looking for something fun, interesting, and free to do, the City of San Bernardino History and Railroad Museum is open every Saturday from 10 till 3. Schedule a group tour by calling 909-888-3634 and learn some fascinating firsts about San Bernardino. That number again, 909-888-3634. And that's a look at the KCAA Community Calendar. I'm Carlos Gonzalez.
KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station, where your business comes first.
And now, here's A1L Palazzo.
Let's get back to what we were talking about, the Orange Show. When I was a kid in the 50s, our city was about 50,000 people, somewhere around there, I believe. Today, it is 200,000 people. I'm going to go back to memory lane, some of the things that I remember as a kid at the Orange Show. But before I do that, I believe we should try to expand the length of time and the exhibits and events that occur during the time of the Orange Show when it is occurring, and return it to the grand fair that it was when I was growing up. It really was something. I mean, it was big. So these are some of the memories that I remember. Well, it lasted 2 weeks. There were 2 parades on the weekend. One was a military parade, and the Marines would come down from the bases in the high desert. And the other weekend, it was a rodeo equestrian parade, because that was the weekend that we also had a rodeo. Wouldn't that be neat? To have that back. We also had a Queen contest, but it was so elegant the way they did it, because the Swing Auditorium, when they dimmed the lights and that big stage and the curtain behind it and everything else, and winning the Queen of the Orange Show seemed to be at a higher level, because the participants were the queens, I believe, from the surrounding cities. So it was very competitive, and to become the Orange Show Queen was just another achievement for a young lady in the Valley who was very beautiful. But I mentioned that the Orange Show had many celebrities and stars. I remember Zsa Zsa Gabor coming, and she was asking for a little Italian boy, and I'm Latino because of my mother, and that was the culture I was raised in. But on my dad's side, I'm Italian, but there wasn't much influence of that culture. But so I was with my aunt, and we were in the audience, and she said, "Hey, she's asking for an Italian boy. Run up there, run up there." But we were so far back, I said, "I'll never make it up there before some other kid." But Kcaa Gabor then, because you have to remember, this was like 50 years ago. She was, I think, Miss Hungary for the Miss Universe pageant. She was really a beautiful lady. So continuing, of course, I mentioned Bob Hope, and I'm going to share a story about that. And there were musicians. And I mentioned, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, he could do it all. He was really the true entertainer. That could sing, dance, act, everything, mimic voices, just everything. But I mentioned Bob Hope, okay? Now I'm going to fast forward to the 70s when I just came back from college and I was hanging out at the discos. And one of the discos was the Plantation Buffet. In the evening, it would have a live band and people would go there and dance. And so I assumed Bob Hope was in the area because of the Orange Show. And before he and his entourage went to Palm Springs, his home in Palm Springs, they decided to take a break at the plantation. And so he came in, and of course everybody recognized him right away. And I was just dancing, and he got up dancing. And he was about 2 feet from me. And so I've always said since that time that I danced with Bob Hope. Because, if he was 2 feet from me and he was dancing near me, we were dancing together, okay? And so that's just one memory. But back to my childhood, and this sounds odd, this memory. I remember when I was a kid in the 50s, maybe 1956, my mom sent a crate of oranges to an aunt who lived across the United States. She was my father's sister. And I think she was living in Florida. This doesn't make sense today because Florida is known for its orange juice. But maybe back then, the industry was not as big as it was in California. Because, remember, we were the home of the National Orange Show. And it was a fair. It really was. In Rancho Cucamonga, next to their library and performing arts Lewis Theater, there is this beautiful mural, huge, on the side of a wall of a valley surrounded by orange trees. Although I am torn because I lived 12 years in Rancho Cucamonga and my 3 kids grew up and still live in Rancho Cucamonga, I feel that mural should be in San Bernardino. When I was 5 years old, we moved to our new house on Western Avenue, a block from the community hospital. The hospital did not exist then. And all that area was orange trees. I remember walking to my elementary school a block away on Muscat. Muscat was a 2-lane road. Now it's Medical Center Drive. But when I got up in the morning, and I don't remember smog, I could look at the valley, and all I saw was orange trees at the foothills. Anyway, so let us not forget our history. The citrus is just one example of the past, along with Route 66, which I've talked about on another show, the train depot, which I've also talked about, and the Arrowhead Springs Hotel that I hope we bring back someday. And that we use to rebuild San Bernardino, to transform this city with a renaissance for the next 100 years. Well, it looks like I'm way ahead of schedule, but I always have something to fall back on, other themes. So I'm just going to move on to two more themes. One is what I call the jewels. And I don't have time to talk about this or explain this on my tour, but that's one of the 12 categories. And the jewels are the government buildings that we have downtown. And right now, they are all concentrated in one spot. And that may be how we looked at a downtown or civic center in the past. But you know, when people leave at 5 o'clock, we have 12 square blocks that are empty, from East Street to Sierra Way, from 5th Street to 2nd Street. And ours are super blocks. So if you were in Pasadena, you could bisect our blocks north and south and east and west. So one block would become 4. So that's nearly 50 blocks of a dead zone. So I'm saying that if we have an opportunity to build another government building, because already I had a show where I said private office buildings could be guided toward East Street so that we could bring back a retail commercial corridor on 5th Street, tying it into reinventing the Carousel Mall. And that would be our Victoria Gardens concept, you know, fanning out towards 6th and 4th Street. But back to the jewels. When I was in Europe, I saw all these beautiful public buildings, and they were focal points where people gathered. Of course, in Europe, there's so many squares and outdoor cafes around these buildings and fountains. So I'm just saying that in the future, maybe we could target some really, really blighted areas and put a government building. Why do all the government buildings have to be east of the 215 freeway? Why not one just on the west side at 5th and J Street? It's right there next to the freeway off-ramps. It's still visible. Or is it that it's in the west side? Now, don't get me started, because I grew up in the west side, but I've been to Paris, London, Rome, Madrid, Vienna, and, you know, I still hunger to be here in San Bernardino. I do, because I think this is a great city, or it has so much potential. Anyway, so what does this have to do with San Bernardino? Well, you know, our city hall, when it was built, it was state-of-the-art. It was in all the international architect digests. But it has to be replaced, I understand, because since the Northridge earthquake, I think the state has raised the bar for public buildings, and I've been told that it doesn't meet the criteria. So it's someday, some point in time, we might have a new city hall when the city can get out of this bankruptcy. And maybe if they thought about what I just prefaced, that we don't put all our eggs in one basket downtown and create a dead zone, because I don't care how well you light up the streets. When people go home at 5 o'clock, it's going to be, unless we have something else to replace it, you know, like restaurants or cafes, it's going to be vacant, a ghost town. So wouldn't it be nice if we had a great public building on 5th Street? That's a gateway to the city coming from Rialto, Foothill Boulevard. It's next to the freeway off-ramp, and it could eliminate some of the oldest and worst blight. And I don't take offense, because that's just a couple blocks from my grandmother's house. And also just a few blocks from my mother's first home that she bought in, I think, around 1935. Anyway, so that was the concept of the jewels. I would like to talk about now Victoria Parkway. This is a green segment of my tour. And I have 3 or 4 greens, but I say if I don't have time for 3 or 4, at least let me do 2, the Little Green and Victoria Parkway, because Victoria Parkway, when you enter it from baseline and you go north and then it curves and goes out toward Milliken, the first thing people have is this instant reaction. They see these trees, these eucalyptus trees that are so many, and it's so wooded that they say, I feel that I'm back east in Washington, D.C. I feel I can breathe, because they associate trees with oxygen or oxygen with trees. And they say, but where are the houses? And the houses are there. They're just on the other side. The trees are just so beautiful and full. So another thing I point out as we drive down Victoria Parkway, there are 3 schools within a mile, and each school is adjacent to a small community park. And during the day, during the recess, the kids leave the school property and they come over to the adjacent neighborhood park, and that's where their teachers allow them to use the park facilities, and then they go back to their classes. So at the end of the day, the school is locked down, but the park still remains open. So many of our schools have great playgrounds, but they're shut out after a certain time of the day. And you know, this is a concept that I'm going to talk to school board members that take my tour. In fact, I have one planned, I think, May 2nd. And I'm going to show them how school districts and the city can save money by sharing park space or playground space. Okay. But another thing that I'm looking at when I'm taking this tour is the green. So I tell the people, okay, pretend we're not on a street, but everything around you, look at the green, and we are just walking on a trail, a paseo or walkway or bike path, riding a bike, and take it in. Because remember, earlier in the show, the first show I said, we're going to reinvent the inner city, and we're going to have single-family homes, which most people prefer, and maybe they'll be about 2,000 square feet, but they will have no yards. One driveway will serve 4 houses or 6 or 8. Well, that's a radical concept. And by the end of my tour, when I show people the green, they get it, because the green it's a way of balancing, compensating, that if you're going to tell people they can't have yards, but really, we are being told that by our state officials, right? Because we're in a drought. And that's going to be the trend. I mean, all the developments today, the yards are shrinking. In fact, some of the younger people who have taken my tour have said they don't want a house with a big yard. They're not into maintaining yards. On weekends, they just want to relax and enjoy themselves and do things. Anyway, but the final point I want to make, the final point about Victoria Parkway, well, there's one other I'll mention, and then I'll make the final point. When it comes out at Milliken, I tell people the lakes and streams should have been superficial. If you ever want to take a drive down Milliken from Ontario Mills north to the 210 freeway, or from the 210 freeway south to Ontario Mills, that medium in between, which is about 10 feet, and it has different shrubs and different things, trees, but there's a depression that is curved. It's kind of made out of stone, rocks. You can imagine a little stream in that depression. And that's really what the lakes and streams should have been. Something simple, a few of those going on secondary streets to not disrupt main streets. But I guess people had really grand ideas, and then they realized they didn't have the money to support it. You know, I think I'm a pragmatist. I really am, but I am a dreamer. Everything I talk about my vision for San Bernardino, I really don't think I can take credit for it because it's something that exists in communities that are nearby to the west. The only difference is this, and this I can take the credit, because nobody has done what I've done and put together a vision and such a thorough plan involving so many areas of development, residential, commercial, light industrial, private office buildings, and support categories. It's comprehensive because it covers a vast area, 1,000 square blocks, and it's not rocket science, but it's complex because it shows how all these areas and support areas, the architecture, water display, art, landscaping, major intersections, gateways, they are all interconnected, interrelated, and support one another. But what people have told me that have taken my tour, they say, and I just had one person, she told me the next day I ran into her, she said, Al, I'm still thinking about the tour. Even though I had been to these places, I've never thought of them in the way that you presented these different developments. And that I can take credit for because that wasn't easy. It took many years, at least 5 years before I went public, and that was 30 years ago. And it took my knowledge and education and training and skills in the field that was my profession and career in order to look at things that some people, they just see on the surface, but I was able to analyze. If you take that concept, where would you do that in San Bernardino, and how would you do it, even though we are a bankrupt city? We don't need the money. Well, the city doesn't need the money to implement those ideas because I keep saying the private sector will implement those ideas. But I'm not sure they have people. You know, at the city council meeting last night, there was an economic report, and I went to Mr. Persico, and he's the community development director, and I said, well, you're working on the zoning, but is all that zoning, when you're done, is it going to allow what I show you on the tour? And we didn't have a long conversation, so I'm just going to wait and see until they have their final plan. And if they don't have what these other communities are doing, you can count on me pointing it out and say, we've spent all this time upgrading our zoning, and we still don't have what these other communities have. That's why we're not in the race. That's why the gap keeps getting bigger between us and other surrounding communities. Also, after Mr. McManus gave a wonderful presentation about, what they're trying to do for the city and all the things that they're working on, I thought it was wonderful, and I really take my hat off to him and Mr. Parker. However, I had to go to the microphone and say there was no mention of affordable middle-class housing in the inner city. And that's the foundation to everything they want to do. And that's what I told them. They spent a lot of time talking about hiring a PR person to change the image of San Bernardino. The image is this, reality. It is what it is. And if you're not going to start rebuilding the inner city from Highland Avenue to Mill Street, from Mount Vernon to Waterman, those 1,000 square blocks, I don't care what fancy words you come up with and you put out there in the media. When people come to San Bernardino and they see this older inner city and nothing has changed, our image won't change. It won't change. We must reinvent this inner city. We are ripe for it. This is what I call a transformation, a renaissance for the next 100 years. And I went to the microphone and I said, when I show you different kinds of development, we're talking about economic development in residential, commercial, light industrial. We're talking about creating jobs for our Valley College vocational students. We're talking about keeping our Cal State graduates here, our future leaders, our brain power, our future entrepreneurs. We're talking about raising the tax base so that we can generate the revenues that we would like to have in this city to provide the services for our citizens, from youth to seniors and everybody in between, to nonprofits that do a lot for the city. And I just take my hat off to the volunteers who worked at the Second Lake and spruced it up, and with the art. And I'm looking forward to what Dr. Ernie Garcia and Dr. Dorothy Garcia are doing with this new art center on E Street between E and Kcaa. And he is right. The city needs to take a look at the potholes out there, and they need to make that a priority. So, Dr. Garcia, I'm putting it out there on the airways and hope that when enough people speak up, maybe our leaders will listen. And this gives me a lead-in to what just has been brought to my attention. You know that man, Francis Gerard Pusok, who was beaten by many sheriff's deputies, that was filmed by a news chopper 4. It seems that the Board of Supervisors have agreed to settle with him. I'm sure most people who saw that, or everyone, would say that the man was already on the ground, right? Why did he have to be hit over and over? You know, in recent weeks, this has been happening all across the United States. And just last weekend, my club, LULAC, and I'm going to invite the president, Joe Alaga, to come and speak about other things. We honored Officer Gabriel Garcia. He did not deserve to be shot. But there are some law enforcement officers that I guess were filmed. And what about the others that were standing by that didn't speak up? Well, anyway, the point I want to make, because we're close to the ending of my show, when enough people speak up, when enough people speak up and speak out, our leaders will listen. And that's what I think happened with the Board of Supervisors. They obviously must have heard from a lot of people in the community. And I remember that Clifton Harris ran on the fact that he wanted to reform the sheriff's department. He for years said that things were happening that needed to change. And so I'm glad I have the opportunity, because the whole purpose of this show, when it was offered to me, it was offered that it would be a show that would reach out to you, the community, the people of San Bernardino Valley, not just San Bernardino, but the surrounding towns, because a lot of the towns are bedroom towns for the jobs and the stores and the restaurants in San Bernardino at Hospitality Lane. That what was my motivation for wanting to do the show? And my motivation is that I'm building a grassroots movement through my tours. And when I shared, I thought I was just going to be a guest here at the radio station. And when I shared this with the people that ran this station, they said I talked too much and that they weren't going to have me on any of their shows. But they asked me, would I like my own show? And I feel so honored and blessed to have had this opportunity. I basically have covered all the themes I want to talk about. I think I have 4 more shows, and I have guests for all of those shows. These are friends that have been involved with the community, with different organizations and different things. I'm looking forward to having Deanna Adams. She speaks at the City Hall often. she has done a lot of research on architecture, and that's the one category that I've been putting off because I've been talking about all kinds of development and the support categories, but we need to raise the bar in San Bernardino. You know, I drive around, I see some new developments, new buildings, especially these dollar stores, and they're so plain. And if we don't raise the bar in San Bernardino, we're going to keep having mediocre buildings. That's why people love going to Rancho Cucamonga and Redlands, because they can see it in the building code, in the architecture of the buildings. And a lot of it, I call it modern with traditional twist on Mediterranean, because you see all these columns that you can associate with the Mediterranean, the Roman civilization, or the Renaissance, or Greek. You see arches, you see these pediments. But you know, I think of the Pantheon, and you know, I think of so much. But you also, you know, southern Spain. You had the Moorish architecture, and then you have what I call early California mission style, which is just another variation of another subcategory of Mediterranean. So I'm looking forward to having Deanna and going into all these, because she seems to have a list of where we actually can find this variety here in San Bernardino. I know I'm getting to the end, and they're going to give me a signal pretty soon, but I'm going to have George Aguilar. He was on the water board for nearly 30 years, and I asked him to bring his wife, Patricia. She has a beautiful voice, and I told her, you're going to have to sing. And I said, it doesn't have to be opera, but I want a patriotic song like America the Beautiful or God Bless America, something. And she said, well, I'll think about it, Al. And so I'm having Sarah Garcia. And, hey, I just saw our technician pull up something, but I wasn't paying attention. Oh, I got 2 minutes left. So, I'm just going to keep rambling, and then he's going to play my closing music, Begin the Begin. So I'm having a lot of fun. I stressed out in the beginning that I had to have a script, and more, I'm writing less and just coming here with an idea, a broad category, and just kind of trying to be more relaxed, because I'm told that's what your listeners would prefer. You know, they would prefer like a conversation, and it's not like they're going to school or they're, have to take notes, and they just want to relax. So I can't thank you enough for joining me. I think we are in our 10th, 9th week, because I have, May 19th will be my last day. And I was told that I have 1 minute left. Hey, what did you think of the music when we went to break? The happy organ, and then we came back with Paris Prado. Oh, I think my technician is going to end it with the happy organ, because he likes that, and I like that too. It reminds me of dancing in the 50s.
KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
I'm Chris Maurer, CNBC Business Radio. Stocks are mixed. The Dow's down 82 points, the Nasdaq higher by 23. The earnings parade continues, with Under Armour beating profit and revenue estimates, but its sales outlook was not what analysts were hoping for. Harley-Davidson turned in mixed results, the motorcycle manufacturer with better than forecast profits, but revenue came up short. Harley also lowering its sales outlook for the year. Lockheed Martin posting a 6% drop in profit because of lower government military spending. And David Einhorn's Greenlight Capital buys into General Motors again. Nearly a year ago, the $11 billion fund sold off its position in the automaker. Greenlight says it believes GM has put behind it the impact of recalling more than 2.5 million vehicles in 2014 because of ignition switch problems. Chris Maurer, CNBC Business Radio.
Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH Plus. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected